Here's the latest addition to the Easter plushies. This is a little Easter bunny. He's made from relatively simple shapes and is small enough that he doesn't really take up much yarn. He was intended to be an improved version of a larger rabbit plushie I did a while ago, which I didn't like the shape of and so never bothered writing down the pattern for. But both of them can carry an egg-shaped, egg-sized thing inside them, without it falling out. All you have to do is just give the plushie a little squeeze. So here's how I made it. For this plushie, the body colour will be blue. The inner side of the ears and the nose will be pink, and the underside of the tail will be white. I'll be using a 4mm hook. You'll also need some eyes, unless you want to embroider them on. These are safety eyes. Choose whichever size you like. Just make sure that they're not so small that they might slip through your stitches. You'll need an elastic band. The opening of the egg holder part of the plushie will require this to keep the plushie sphincter tight enough that the egg won't fall out. When choosing your elastic or hairband, make sure it's smaller than the egg when relaxed, but when stretched can fit around the widest part of the egg. The big one, although it does fit around the egg and is a little smaller than the widest part of the egg, will be stretched by the addition of crochet stitches around it and will end up being too slack, so I'm using the smaller one. I chose this blue hairband because it's a similar colour to the yarn and will be less visible when the opening is stretched. To begin the rabbit, I'm starting with the egg holder, because when I made this pattern, the final size of the plushie was influenced by the size of the egg I wanted to stick inside it. I start by slip stitching into the hairband, then chaining 2. These will not count as the first stitch because I want to make sure the stitches end up nice and close together with no gap before the beginning of the row. Now I double crochet around the hairband 24 times. If you run out of room on the hairband to add stitches, just pull the stitches together and continue. If it looks uneven, you should be able to just give it a quick stretch so the tension of the elastic evens out. At the end of the row, I slip stitch into the first double crochet stitch. So I'm skipping this chain 2 and crocheting into that first double crochet. If you find it adds too much bulk for your liking, you can count that chain 2 as your first stitch and only do 23 double crochets. At this point, I single crochet up in a spiral. After the first row, you can see it fits nicely around the egg. I'll be making this holder to fit a slightly smaller Kinder Surprise egg, but I'll be using this plastic egg to roughly gauge the size as I don't want to melt the chocolate with my warm hands or accidentally crack it. I'm going to do 7 rows of single crochet up the side, and I'll need 2 rows worth of space for the decreases. You should adapt your pattern to suit your yarn thickness, thread tension, and egg size. After the rows are done, it looks like this. And when I slip the egg into it, the rows go up this far. Since I'm making this for a smaller egg than this one right here, I'm not going to do any further rows. Begin the decreases when the length of the egg you need to cover is the equivalent of 2 rows. Alternate between single crochets and decreases for this next row. For the row after, do decreases all the way round. Tie off and stitch the hole shut. Weave the end in and your egg should fit in there nicely. When it comes to which side should be on the outside, I always put the nice, neat-looking side facing inwards, as the other side will be on the inside of the plushie with the stuffing. You'll probably never see much of the inside of the holder, but if you're going to be giving this to children, it's possible that your Easter bunny will suffer from a prolapsed egg compartment at some point, and if that ever does happen, it will look prettier if the nice side was facing inwards while you do the next part. I'm going to do the body next. When you're doing this, make sure you crochet with the opening of the holder facing downwards, otherwise the neat-looking side will end up on the inside. Between each of the top of the double crochet stitches, there is a little loop that goes between them. This is the point between each stitch that I'll be attaching this first row of the body to. I'm single crocheting straight into one of these loops. It doesn't matter where you start along the row. There are 24 stitches in the row of the holder that I'm working into, and I'm alternating between 2 single crochet and an increase all the way around. So I'll end up with 32 stitches by the end of this first row, once I finally finish it. With all the searching for stitches, it's probably the slowest row in this project. I've done the last stitch in the row and I'm going to slip stitch into that first stitch of the row. Making sure to pull it tight. Then chain 1 and single crochet back into that same stitch. In this row, I'm alternating between 3 single crochet and an increase all the way round. By the end of the row, there should be 40 stitches. I'm crocheting the rest of this body in a spiral. So instead of slip stitching, I'm single crocheting straight into the first stitch of the last row. For the next 5 rows, I'm just single crocheting all the way round. For the next 5 rows, I'll be doing 2 decreases in each round, and I'll be staggering them to reduce any deforming. It might be completely unnecessary, but I'm doing it anyway. This is the stagger I decided on for the decreases. After the decreases, there is a barely noticeable taper. It's definitely tapered, you just can't really see it. And the inside should look like this. If somehow it doesn't, something must have gone horribly wrong somewhere. I'm going to start the regular decreases now. So this row will be repeats of 3 single crochet and a decrease all the way round. At this point, while the opening is still wide enough, I'm going to stuff him. Make sure the egg is inside the holder at this point, and try to get the stuffing in evenly around the egg. You want him to be quite firm, but not bursting. If he's too soft, he'll just look sad after a few squeezes. But he needs to have enough stuffing in him that he can still be shaped to look normal, even if he's not carrying an egg. And it's at this point that I accidentally cracked the egg. It's okay, the stuffing can continue. I replaced the egg with a sturdier one, the one I was supposed to be using during the manhandling portions of the Easter Bunny's creation, which was a bit too big, but it sufficed. I also added the eyes. There will only be 3 more rows after this, so use this information to decide where you want his eyes to be. I'm thinking about nose placement in this moment as well. I want to be sure that there's a nice stitch somewhere right in the middle that I can put a perfect sized little nose into. I tried to put them in approximately the same place as his green bunny brother, but didn't succeed, despite the reference being right there in front of me. So they're going to look different, but they're definitely still related. I am their mother after all. Once you're happy with the eye placement, seal them in place with fire. I'm just topping him up with a bit more stuffing before finishing off the top of his head. The next row will be 2 single crochets and a decrease, repeated all the way round. Then alternate between a single crochet and a decrease. I don't want the top of his head to be soft and squishy, so he gets a bit more stuffing before his last row of decreases. The opening will be too small to comfortably add any more stuffing after the next row of decreases. Now for the last row, which is just decreases all the way round. Once finished, tie off, stitch the hole shut, tie a knot, and hide the end. That's the bunny body done. He can have his broken egg back now. Now we're doing the arms. This is quick and simple, just start with a ring. I like to make my rings by chaining 3, slip stitching into the first chain, then chaining 1. Inside this ring, make 6 single crochets. I'm single crocheting straight into that first stitch to begin the next row. Do 4 rows of single crochet. Tie off and one arm is done. You'll need 2 of these if you want them to look somewhat normal. Next, the ears. I start with the inner ear colour, which is pink in this case. Be careful with your slip knot. If you pull the tail end through to make your loop instead of the working end, this first stitch can loosen when you work your single crochets into it later, leaving you with a hole which sometimes refuses to be pulled tight. So start with your slip knot. Chain 13, single crochet into the second chain from the end and work back along the chain until you get to the last stitch. Work 5 single crochets into that last stitch. Then single crochet down the opposite side until you get to the end. Tie off. This part is finished. Now we move on to the other side of the ear. This starts off exactly as the pink part of the ear did, so repeat the same thing but in the body colour. Once it's done, don't tie off. Put the ugly sides together so that the prettier sides are pointing outwards. We're going to join them together. Make sure they're lined up correctly and the tops are together, not upside down. Chain 1. Then single crochet into the corner, going through both pieces. The next single crochet goes in the middle of the bottom of the ear. Then do 3 single crochet in the other corner. Make sure the stitches are all lined up and work a single crochet into each stitch, making sure you go through both pieces each time. When you get to that stitch right before the one at the very tip, do 2 single crochet into it. Do 1 single crochet into the tip, then 2 into the next one. Single crochet down the other side of the ear, and when you get to the very first stitch that joined the 2 pieces together, do 2 single crochet into it. You can now tie off. I'm going to use the tail end to sew this onto the body, so I'm making sure it's long enough for that. The tail is done in the same way as the ears, but it's just shorter. So start with the underside colour and chain 6. Single crochet back into the chain, and when you get to that very last chain, do 5 single crochet into it. Single crochet down the other side, and it's done. Tie off. Take the body colour and do the exact same thing. Except once you finish, again, don't tie off. Again, we put the ugly sides together and begin single crocheting them together. Chain 1, then single crochet the corners together. Then single crochet through the middle part. Then do 3 single crochet through that other corner. Single crochet through the next 4 stitches of both sides. This is what the other side should look like. In the stitches either side of the tip, we're going to do 2 single crochet. So do 2 single crochet in this next stitch, one single crochet through the tip, then 2 single crochet in the next stitch. Finish the other side off by single crocheting all the way down through both sides. Once you arrive back to that very first stitch that you made to join the halves together, single crochet back into it 2 times, so that the corner stitch has a total of 3 single crochet in it. You can tie off now. Your bunny tail is done. I wanted the feet to have a bit more shape. You could just crochet a cylinder, but if you want it to have this pinch in it, I'll go over the pattern for it now. This leg is already stuffed, and I've jammed it right in there, so there's stuffing only in the foot and not in the leg. Not having the stuffing in the leg will help his legs to fit under his body without him falling over. Start the leg off by making a ring in your favorite way, and single crochet into the middle of it 8 times. I'm working in a spiral, so I'm single crocheting straight into that first stitch to begin the next row. The next row is all increases, so add 1 more single crochet into that same stitch, then 2 single crochet into each stitch of the rest of the row. Then do 2 rows of single crochet. Continue the next few rows with this pattern of single crochet and decreases, and this should give you the foot shape. Now you should have a shape which could look like a foot. Finish the leg off by doing 2 rows of single crochet. Tie off, leaving a tail end long enough to sew it to the body. Then add some stuffing into the foot. Since I want to be able to squash the leg, there's no stuffing further up the leg. Now it's time to stitch all the bits on. Lastly, and most frustratingly for me, is the nose. The green sibling has a perfect little nose. I don't remember how I got it so perfectly cute, but here's me trying to replicate it. Go through the head and emerge from where you want the nose to begin. I want it to be almost heart-shaped, so I'm going back in through this stitch and out the other side of the top of his nose. Then going back down. But it doesn't look right. So I went over it again, but it still didn't look right. So I took it out and started again, and eventually ended up with this. It's different. Not as cute as his green brother's nose, but it gives him character. Don't try to force your children to follow in the footsteps of their older, cuter siblings. Just love them for who they are. I was going to give him a white tummy, but it looked bulky. Maybe this would work better with a thinner velvet yarn, but I'm not going to do that, because I don't have any thin white velvet yarn. You could give your rabbit cute blushing cheeks if you dare attempt any further embellishments. I don't. My rabbit is done. To put the egg in, you might have to stretch the elastic if it's quite tight, but if your plushie is as loose as this one, it'll just slip right in. And squeeze right out, but it shouldn't fall out. Let me demonstrate with some vigorous shaking. It should just stay in there. Here are the finished rabbits. There are a few other egg-laying plushies behind them that I made ages ago. You can find tutorials for them, with the exception of the white rabbit, on my channel.